All right, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Our quick lightning talk is on delivering value to your your users sooner with end-to-end testing. We're going to talk a little bit about why you would do end-to-end testing, how that is going to help you deliver to your users sooner, and why that's important. And then we're going to demo the tool and see how much time we have left after that. So I'm Kelly Albrecht. I'm an Agile coach with Last Call Media, and I'm here with
Hi, I'm Michael Wojcik. I'm a senior developer at Last Call Media.
And if you're working with us, you're working with Last Call Media, solving complex problems, usually iteratively, usually with testing shifted left in the process. So why end-to-end? What is end-to-end? Let's talk about end-to-end. So if you have a customer and you're trying to get them value and you're developing a feature so that they can receive that value, that customer is going to start on some end of that feature, on some end of your site, on some end of your product, and make their way all the way to the other end where that value is. So that's incredibly important. If you're not delivering that, you're not delivering value to your customers. So that's important to do. That's important to be able to verify. That's important to keep front and center early on in your process. You want to ensure your customers receive value. So if you have end-to-end tests running, you are continuously verifying that that is not regressing or breaking as you're doing your development. So getting end-to-end tests in place as soon as possible is critical there. Delivering value means delivering features that go end-to-end. So this is where if you're thinking about needing to pass some end-to-end tests, you're thinking right away, how am I developing so that I'm working iteratively and I'm working so that what I'm deploying is something that a customer could go end-to-end on and receive that value. So if you're prioritizing end-to-end, you're actually prioritizing customer delivery. And by prioritizing customer delivery, you will be delivering sooner. If we don't keep end-to-end in focus, we can pretty easily trick ourselves into thinking we're getting a lot done. Right? We can break our project into, like, we're doing the API and we're doing the front end and we're doing some kind of back office thing and we're doing a lot of work in each one of those things. But if we're and we can be delivering in each one of those components, but if we're not delivering end to end, our customers aren't receiving value and they're basically sitting there waiting for us to get it together and integrate the stuff and deliver an integrated version. So end-to-end thinking is going to get you thinking about integrating as early as possible. And that's what our customers care about. So here's a few bullet points on why end-to-end. We're just keeping that goal in mind. We want our deliverables to be fully integrated, and we want that testing testable and verified in our automated end-to-end testing. So it's really important. It's really the priority. Our customers are our priority, and getting them their value is the priority. And so I'm going to hand it over to Michael to talk a little bit about a tool that we found really easy to use and some of the whys and hows about that.
Thanks, Kelly. Can you see the slides on my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, so as Kelly was talking about, the specific tool that we've been using recently for end-to-end testing is Cypress. Basically, it's a testing tool written in JavaScript that makes it really easy to write, run, and debug your own end-to-end tests. And some things that I wanted to call out was that I found useful about it, and what drew me to it to use in our own projects was that they really focus on designing the tool for developers, and also that it's meant to test anything that runs in a browser is really what their kind of claim to fame is. And it's also, I found, really easy to set up because there's no other dependencies. As you see on the homepage of their site here, it's as easy as running npm install Cypress or yarn add Cypress if you're a Yarn user, and that's it. It's all ready to go. In terms of some other cool features, I have a list here that I won't talk about all of them, but a couple that I want to call out that I'll show in a quick live demo here in just a moment is the time travel feature that lets you actually step through each step of the test as you're viewing it in the GUI. And also there's tons of screenshots and videos that it provides of your tests out of the box. So you'll get screenshots of all your failures, unfortunately. but as well as videos of your entire test runs that you can then share with your other developers or even clients to take a look at how things are running end to end. And of course, if you want to look at these docs yourself, I encourage that. Visit docs.cypress.io, and it's, again, really easy to set up. But with that in mind, we just wanted to show you, because this is a lightning talk, we wanted to show you an actual, just a really quick live demo of like basic features of how you would use Cypress. So we're going to show you a quick way of how to navigate around a site, how to fill out a form, and as well as how to verify a result, so how to make a testing assertion. And so let's hope this goes well. I'm going to pull up my IDE here. And so you guys should be able to see here. Again, I'm not going to run this here. I already have Cypress installed locally, but you could run it via yarn or npm to install it. So we're going to forego that. But then once you have it installed, I installed it with yarn. So I'm going to use yarn run. And then once you install Cypress, you get a couple command line tools. So the easiest is Cypress Open, and once you run that, what that's going to do is going to pull up the nice graphical user interface for Cypress. And you'll see here by default, once you run that npm install Cypress, you'll get a bunch of example tests here that you can use to go off of. But what we're going to do instead of that is we're going to go back to our IDE, and I'll show you what that looks like. So we're actually in a Drupal site here. This is actually the code base for the Last Call Media Drupal 8 site. And after we install Cypress, you see in the project root, we now have a Cypress directory. And so the plan here is to write a quick test to show you how it all works. So in Cypress directory, there's a few subfolders. Where your test goes is actually the integration folder. So we're going to go into integration. And here's where we're going to make a new file. So we're going to call ours the contact form end-to-end test. And you just end that in .spec.js. And so now we have a file ready to go. And before I get into that, before we start writing a test, just to show you what our use case is, I have my localhost version of the LCM site pulled up here. But basically, this is the LCM homepage. The kind of user story that we want to test is we want a user to come to the homepage. They want to come down here. They want to get in touch with us. So they're going to click the Get in Touch button. It's going to pull up the nice, that classic D8 contact form. We're going to have Cypress fill it out and hit send and make sure that they get a confirmation message that it all worked properly. So with that kind of basic user story in mind, you'll see how easy it is to start writing a test here in Cypress. First off the bat, no need for import statements. You can immediately just start describing your test. So we're going to call ours contact form and end-to-end test, E to E. And then you just start basically writing. So first you might be familiar with this kind of syntax if you've done any other kind of behavior-driven development testing. So we're going to say that it should fill out and submit contact form. So that's going to be our basic test, what we're going to expect it to do. And so now we're already ready to start writing our test. No import statements, nothing like that. As long as it's in the right folder, Cypress knows what to do with it. So the first step is often going to be a sci.visit call. So you'll get familiar with the syntax here. Most every command starts with the sci object, and it's all object-oriented, very easy. Everything is chainable. Everything is also promise-based. When you run these commands, Cypress knows to wait for each chainable command to finish running before moving on to the next. So we write sci.visit. We're going to our home page, and I can pull up the GUI here, and we should now be able to see we have our spec here. And in the GUI, it's as simple as clicking on that spec file, and you'll see what it looks like. So now Cypress is going to bring up our test and run it, and we see it's already up and running. So we're already on our way to finish our end-to-end step. Now, again, we're going to, as we described, we're going to, on our homepage, we're going to look for the button that says Get in Touch. And as a kind of best practice for end-to-end testing, I like to use the contains method here. So as a human would look for a button that says Get in Touch, we're going to tell Cypress to look for something on the page that says Get in Touch and then click it. And this will also bring us to our first kind of testing assertion here. So where we're actually going to make sure that things are passing. So there's a nice built-in URL method here where then Cypress will get the URL, and then we're going to make our first assertion, which is our kind of first test case, which we're saying the URL should include, and then we're going to say it should include the word contact. And so now, hopefully, fingers crossed, Cypress will rerun this test. Again, because we have hot reloading here, you notice in the GUI, so our test keeps rerunning as we update it in our IDE. And now we're seeing our test is passing. We've asserted we're on the contact page. You see localhost 8080/contact, so we're ready to fill out our form. So just to finish the quick demo here, we'll use that contains method again. And if we look back at the form, what we're going to be looking for is the name field, the email, and the message field. And then we want to hit that send button. And so what we're going to do is look for that name field. So in this case, we're grabbing the label. And then there's some handy other methods that you can explore in the doc. So here we're going to look for an element that says name. And then we're going to grab the next input. So because the label should be right next to the input, how we designed it. And we're going to use the command type. And so I'll type in my name, Michael. And so that's going to fill out that first field. Okay. And then we're going to tell Cypress, let's look for that email field. Similarly, we'll get then the next input there after that label, and we'll type in my email. And again, feel free to email me if you have any questions, of course. It's michael@lastcallmedia.com. Would love to hear from y'all. But to finish out, we're going to finally look for that message field. And this one is actually a text area. So we're going to look for the next text area after Cypress finds that label. And then we're going to type our nice message here. Hello, DrupalCon Global. And so we've now theoretically filled out our form. Now Cypress, the last step is we're going to have Cypress now find that nice send button. So we're going to look for an element that contains the word send. And we're going to tell Cypress to click it. Now, how we have our Drupal site set up is we want to make another assertion about the URL. In our case, when they submit the contact form, they actually should stay on the same URL. So here, we're going to actually assert again that they're still on that same contact page, actually. So we're saying the URL should still include contact. But then finally, we should see now a success message after if they have successfully submitted it. So now we're going to look for that nice confirmation message where we tell them it's nice to hear from you, which we do feel, we'd all love to hear from you at Last Call Media if you have any questions. So we're going to then make our final assertion here in the test, and we're just going to tell Cypress to check that simply should exist, that nice confirmation. Yes. And so now, if we go back to the GUI, we can run all tests from the beginning, and you'll see it step through basically, and now run through. It's filling out that form. It's running through. It's actually sending the form. And as we see, Cypress actually knows to wait to make its assertions. And now we submitted our form. We get our nice confirmation message. It worked. We have our end-to-end test running. And that's how easy it is to run, to basically write a real end-to-end test in real time. And as mentioned before, a cool feature here, just while we're looking at it, is that nice time travel feature. So you can actually hover over these steps and basically go back in time all the way to where it started, and step by step see a screenshot of each step along the way, and watch Cypress fill out the form and submit it and get to that final screen. But that's how simple it is to write an end-to-end test there. You see, we ended up with just 13 lines of code for an end-to-end test like that, and that's good to go. And now that'll help us make sure that we don't introduce any regressions that break our contact form down the line, get that integrated in something like a continuous integration tool, continuous deployment, make sure that no new changes break this end-to-end test, and make sure that runs so that everyone can keep in touch with us.
Awesome. We got a couple of questions. I don't know if you want to see what you think. What if there are multiple elements containing the same string? Like if there are multiple send calls to action on the page and we just want to target one of them more specifically?
So there are a few strategies. Cypress, their philosophy out of the box was to build their tool to look a lot like jQuery. And while we don't often use jQuery in a lot of the modern frameworks now, there's a lot of different selectors and options. If you go to that docs.cypress.io, there are many methods. For example, contains if it in fact contains if there's multiple elements, that sounds like the use case was that contain the same string, it'll return an array of elements, and then you can further filter it down with further methods, or test all of them, or look for sibling items. There's a whole kind of plethora of these types of jQuery style methods that should seem familiar to anyone who's been kind of working with JavaScript in the past.
Next question is how. So are each of those test runs stored, meaning the time travel thing?
The time travel, I think, is just a feature of the GUI itself. But what is stored is, again, what's stored by default are screenshots of any test failures. So if your test fails, Cypress will store that in a directory. If I pull up here and go in here, by default it installs a screenshots directory. So we didn't have any failures because our test is too good. But it did create an MP4 for us already to show our test. So we actually already have a real MP4 file of our test ready to go. I hope that answers the question.
How is Cypress different, better than Behat?
That's a good question. For me, really, the value added is kind of like the ease of the developer experience here. It's obviously very similar to that kind of syntax. I'm by no means an expert in Behat, but I believe it would probably look very similar with the kind of describe and it should syntax, things like that for how you write out your tests. But I think where Cypress really comes in handy is the ease of use, the fact that everything is chainable. All of these things like contains and things like that return DOM elements that you can then manipulate. You can write custom commands, but basically it's as if you're writing any JavaScript application, and it's just made to be very readable and very easy to develop as well.
I've also found it's a lot easier conceptually to shift further left in the development process to get product owners essentially thinking about their features more end to end and thinking about ahead for how they want to demo that feature, and then coordinating with development because you want that feature end to end tested. You're thinking more about how it's going to be tested and how you're going to verify that behavior from end to end.
Yeah, I think Cypress as a tool really encourages the philosophy of test-driven development, where ideally you'd actually be writing out your tests first and then writing your code to actually conform to those tests. So, and Cypress makes that easy because it's in its own silo. It has no dependencies. I could write my Cypress test first like this, and then I could code my Drupal contact form to try and fit that test. So that kind of enables that truly test-driven development cycle in that respect.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of the Gherkin syntax. I'm just speaking from like a coaching perspective, trying to get the teams thinking in terms of, especially even the product owners trying to talk Gherkin syntax and acceptance criteria. It's easier to think about just like telling the story and visually telling the story of how you would demo it and how the customer would drive through from concept to cache essentially. Let's see. I'm not sure how much time we have for questions. We pretty much nailed the 15-minute one. There was a question about what IDE you have. Are there other options? I think somebody else answered that it's Vim with plugins. Is that true?
That's true. I'm a Vim user. I'm guilty as charged.
Looks like Uber Emacs.
No Emacs, Vim all the way, but that's the topic for another discussion. But if you'd like to debate Vim versus Emacs with me, or I also have used things like VS Code or PHP Storm in the past, and of course Cypress doesn't care really what IDE you use, but I'm happy to talk about that, and I'll be hanging out in the Last Call Media booth after this talk. If you want to come chat in the exhibit hall, I think Kelly and I, or at least myself, I'll be hanging out in the in the Last Call Media booth, so feel free to come and chat. I'd love to hear from
And we
you.
did have somebody add that there's a Cypress Gherkin plugin if that's your jam.
Yeah.
So, thanks, everybody. See you over at the Last Call booth.
Thanks very much.